I'm actually really excited to make this video for you because I have some really great tips that I haven't seen anybody talk about online yet. We are going to go over everything from the very beginning. If you have just picked up your jump rope and you're starting out with singles, I'm going to help you enhance those skills. And then if you are ready for dubs, we're going to work on plenty of drills to get you there. But first we're going to go over some equipment, jump rope technique, and then we will get into some timing and rhythm drills and finish it off with some common mistakes that people make. So the first thing that we're going to get into is equipment. It's very important to have the right size rope. So it's actually really nice to have your own. If you can purchase your own rope, then you can measure it to your own height and it will always be right for you, and you don't have to borrow anybody else's and trip up on your jump rope because it's too long or too short. Anyway, there's also different thicknesses that you're going to want to look at for ropes. Beginners are going to start with something a little bit thicker. I have right here these 3 different ropes. This green one here, this thicker one, is great for brand new jumpers because it's easier to get it under your feet. These thinner ones are great once you start getting a little bit more experienced with jump roping. So for singles, this thicker one's a little bit better, but when you start getting into speed jump roping, you're gonna want as thin of a cable as you can get it. The next thing is gonna be measuring it for yourself. The way I like to do it is I will put both feet into the rope in my jump position, which I like to keep my feet together. And then you bring your handles up. I like to have the end of my handles land right here above my armpits. Depending on your dexterity, you may need to have a thicker handle for your jump rope. Some people like to have them really thin. Personally, I like a little bit of a thicker handle because I like to hold it down here at the end and keep your thumb on top, because that way when you're jumping, you can really flick the rope down to the ground. Most manufacturers will send you a pre-cut length for your jump rope. You just put in your height and they'll send you the right rope, or they'll send you a universal rope that you can cut and just follow the manufacturer's directions to get it to your right height. Okay, so it's really important for us to have a very consistent jump. So what I like to do is I like to draw a little tiny box on the floor. That way when I'm jumping, I can focus on staying inside this box. And that will help me keep my jumps from being a little inconsistent where people like to jump back and forth or forward and backwards. So the first drill is going to be working on our jumping. We want to make our jumps as consistent as possible. So for our singles, we want to try and get about 2 inches off the ground. Any more than that and you're just wasting energy. So your jumps with your feet together, your knees together, you want to make it one uniform pogo stick essentially, and you're just going to use your toes to jump off the ground and make each jump very consistent. And again, try to stay in that box. When it comes to doing double unders, we want to make that jump a little bit higher. So I like to go about 3 inches off the ground. And I know that's hard to tell, but you'll eventually pick that up as you watch yourself. Hopefully you'll take videos of yourself and critique yourself so that you can get better. But with a double under, I like to go a little bit higher. You need a little bit more space for clearance. So just practice jumping up and down over and over, trying to keep that same rhythm every time. Okay, so now that we have done the box hop drill, we're gonna do kind of a similar thing, but it's gonna be more of a penguin hop. And so that is where we are gonna add our hands into it and help us get a good rhythm with the jump rope. So again, we'll start with singles, and that's just literally gonna be tapping our thighs with our hands as we jump up. And then you just wanna keep practicing that and go a little bit faster each time you try it, because then we're going to lead into doing double penguin hops, which is tapping your thigh twice, representing a double under. So you want to jump a little bit higher this time and tap your thigh twice. And then you can speed it up. And then another variation of doing a penguin hop would be coming over to the bar. This one's going to help you jump straight up a little bit more, but you're just gonna tap the bar above you. It's gonna help you kind of build the strength in your calf to jump a little bit higher. And then you're gonna do the same thing for doubles. Preferably pick a bar that's a little bit taller than you. Okay, so now that we've already gone over some drills, let's go over hand positioning. It's really important where you keep your hands and your elbows while you're jumping. I like to tuck my elbows in as much as I can because that relieves a lot of fatigue in the shoulders as you keep going. And then when you are jumping, you want to make sure that your hands are about a 45-degree angle outwards. You don't want them too far in and you don't want them too far out, because look what happens to the rope. When they're too far out, the rope comes up too high and then I'm going to trip over it. If they're too close, the rope's going to bounce off the ground and you're going to trip over it. So you want it to be just right so that the rope lands or hits the ground about 4 to 6 inches in front of your toes, and that it only hits the ground about like here, about 6 inches wide under your feet, because you want to make sure that the rope is going to go under your feet. So however wide your feet are, that's what you're aiming for. Another tip I like to give with holding the handles is I like to make sure that my thumb is on top, because then when you are flicking your wrist, you're actually basically pushing your thumb to the ground. I almost like to think of it as if my thumb is pushing a lever down that's lifting my feet off the ground at the same time. So now we're going to put everything together that we've already learned, and I'm going to demonstrate exactly what a single should look like when you're ready to start moving on to dubs. If your singles don't look like this yet, then you need to keep practicing until you get to this point. So we're going to stay inside our box. Make sure that you're inside one of the mats so you're not jumping over one of the seams and potentially tripping yourself. But singles are going to go like this. If you can do your singles like this, you're ready to move on to dubs. The goal will be to speed up your singles and barely get off the ground. Because then when you get to doubles, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to try to jump really low so that you can conserve energy, but this is what your double unders are going to look like with all of the information we've put together so far. Make sure you have relaxed shoulders, that you have your knees together, your toes together, and that you are bouncing off of your toes like a spring, not your knees. So don't bend your knees like this. Make sure you're bouncing off of your toes and mostly keeping your knees straight. Now we're going to put everything together that we've already learned, and we're going to start with some really slow singles. The idea with these is to jump really high so that you can try to get that rope underneath you twice when it comes to dubs. So for the singles, let's practice really, really slow. We're going to over-exaggerate how slow they're going to be, okay? So try to jump really high with these and get used to that height. Because like I said, when it comes time to do dubs, you're going to have a lot more time to get that rope under your feet twice. Now that we have our positioning and our timing down for the singles, it's time to just start those doubles. So make sure that when you're starting your doubles, you're jumping just as high as you were for those singles that we just did. But this time you're going to flick your wrist really fast twice. So just go ahead and give it a shot. You're going to whip yourself, and that's kind of part of the game. That's also why it's important to probably start with a thicker rope so it won't hurt as much when you do whip yourself. But it's going to happen. Even as an experienced jump roper myself, I whip myself all the time. It's just the name of the game. So give it a shot, but we're going to keep that same height with the jump and throw the rope underneath us twice. Also want to mention that there is a progression that you can do. Some people are for it, some people are not. I personally don't find it to be very helpful because it kind of throws my rhythm off. But the progression is doing single, single, double. So that will help you kind of build that momentum for the double, but this is what it's gonna look like. So single, single, double. And then you gotta go back into your singles. So single, single, double, single, single, double, single, single, double. But it's kind of hard to do small jumps and then a big jump and then small jumps. So I find it easier to stay consistent and just keep practicing your dubs over and over. One of the most common mistakes that people make is kicking back when they're jumping and not staying straight and jumping straight up. So let me show you what that looks like. When I kick my feet back, my jump becomes very inconsistent and I get off rhythm very quickly. So to fix that, you want to be able to see your toes when you're jumping. So as you're jumping, don't pike forward like that, but definitely jump straight up so you can see your toes. You want to pretend that your entire body is a pogo stick. Keep your legs as straight as you can and don't bend your knees very far because that's gonna take a lot of your energy away. The straighter you can keep your legs, the less fatigued you will be jumping. So I'm gonna show you, again, the wrong way of doing it, both forward and backwards without a rope. So this is the kick back. And this is the pike forward. We want to avoid those. Another common mistake that people often make is letting their hands drift out too far or their elbows drift out too far as their shoulders start to fatigue. So we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. When your hands come out a little far like this, your rope comes up high and you're going to end up tripping over your rope. So make sure to keep your elbows in because people make this mistake every single time I see them jump rope. Their hands always tend to veer out like this. And then on the opposite side of it, again, we also mentioned this earlier, don't bring your hands in too close because then your rope will bounce off the ground. To fix that for some people, like if you get stuck with a rope that's a little bit longer or a little bit shorter, you can adjust that by moving your hands in and out. So if you get a really short rope, then you're going to want to bring your hands in closer to make the rope a little bit longer so you can get your feet over the top. And then just the opposite, if your rope is really long, you can bring your hands out a little bit further. And then same kind of thing, if it's just a short distance, you can grab the rope up a little bit higher on the handle, or I like to hold my handle down here on the end. And lastly, a couple pro tips for you. One thing being your hair in a ponytail. Some women like to say put your hair in a bun up really tight on the top of your head. I don't think that's a great idea because you don't get as much clearance that way with the rope. I like to wear a low ponytail, even though it's not in a bun. I've never had a problem with it tripping my rope up. So low ponytail for the win. And then another thing, my favorite thing to do is wear my running shoes. They're way more bouncy, causes a lot less fatigue on the feet and the calves, so I can jump a lot longer and a lot higher. I really want to encourage you to keep practicing your jump rope. Like any movement, consistency and practice is extremely important. If you're still here, thanks for watching. My name is Drea. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if there's anything else that you'd like to see, please leave it in the comments below.